Patterson pulls it down, fires, touchdown. Nick Eubanks. Near side, Donovan Peoples-Jones making people miss. Sprint in. Touchdown, Wolverine.
Hartenberger
standing at the 26. And it's blocked. It's loose. Michigan State recovers, but the Wolverines block it. Khaleke Hudson, the Viper.
Welcome into another episode of Hail to the Podcast. Joined by me, as always, is Daniel Dash. I am Brandon Justice, each of the WolverineLounge.com. We are here today, a few days, I should say, after Michigan's debacle of Michigan State, and we will touch on that throughout the episode today. You might have noticed that last week we were not on your streams. I was knocked out cold by strep throat. I woke up on Wednesday and was sidelined until Friday and found it in me via steroids from the doctor and Z-Pack to be listed as active for Saturday.
Do you want to tell them about the adversity you faced on Saturday morning?
I was going to get to that. So, let's just kick it off with a story. I feel like that's good. So, here, let me take you guys into a little bit of like what a game day is like. Okay, obviously at the Wolverine Lounge, I run the show, and I don't really have anybody to answer to as far as when I am where, right? But I still like to be, timely, right? I have a 45-minute drive from Ann Arbor. I moved back downriver after 3 years out here back in May, so I'm back to having that 45-minute trek out here. And all year this year, I've left in a really timely manner, and every time I get here in Ann Arbor, which is where we're recording, by the way, in Dash Studios, every time I get to Ann Arbor, it is just empty, to me at least. There's obviously a lot of people here. It's a game day. But compared to growing up when I felt like I was in just this never-ending traffic going to these games, and even back like a few years ago, I don't know, maybe traffic just worked out a lot better this year. That's how I felt.
Maybe you get there 2 to 3 hours early with your media credential before people start filling the parking lot.
Yeah, I guess that's it. But I get every other game that started at 12, I got to Ann Arbor around 10:30, 10:45, so like an hour and a half, 90 minutes before the game, and there was never anything going on, and I always tried to be like, all right, let's be really punctual today, and let's get here an hour and so before. Anyways, long story short, I get to Ann Arbor at 11 on Saturday, which is behind. Like, I had family surprise us from West Virginia on Friday. I had just gotten over strep throat. I know, no excuses, but regardless, I got off of the Saline exit at 10:59 or something like that. When I get off the exit, I'm like, okay, cool. Like, we're here. There was some traffic on 94, but whatever. Like, I'm here. I made it. No big deal. I'll be in there 30 minutes to kick at the latest. Normally what I do is, shout out to Josh Newkirk and Henschke for this idea, I park a few streets away. It's free, and then I Uber to the stadium. Sometimes I'll Uber with those guys. Sometimes I'll Uber by myself. Obviously, at this point of the day, it was a solo Uber. So I get to my Uber, I get to Ann Arbor. I get off the highway. And I'm thinking, great, here we go. Let's park. Let's do the thing like I always do. It's a normal Saturday. Let me tell you, it was not a normal Saturday. It was the most annoying 45-minute saga possibly of my existence. I mean, I love football. This made me hate football for about 45 minutes. I'm driving this stupid football game. Why do so many damn people care about this stupid football game? That's basically what I'm telling myself. I have really bad road rage, and lately I've been really good at controlling it, but it all went out the window at that moment in time. I'm sitting on Saline Road over off of Main Road, like where it turns into it. I don't know how to describe it. And it just stopped. It's just stopped. It's barely even go. It's like stop and go. Like, it doesn't even deserve to say go. It's just stop and go.
That is what happens on a Michigan State day.
Well, you know what? I thought I could at least get off the highway. I have to make one left at CO Church or SIO Church, whatever the hell it's called. And that was half a mile, maybe a mile away from when I got off the highway. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, that will probably take 10 or 15 minutes to get to, you'd think, right? That's fair. Counting the traffic. 45 minutes later, I finally get to where I usually park. The streets are ice sheets. I mean, not even close to touch with the plow. The neighborhood streets, which Ann Arbor is infamous for, not plowing its roads in the city. And it's ice sheets. There's like 13 cars on that side. There's 13 cars behind me. I'm trying to find a spot. It's impossible. I finally just say, you know what, F this. I pull out of where I usually park, and I go like 6 blocks south. And I'm like, hey, I caught the bullet. I'm going to bite it. It's 11:40. This game starts in 20 minutes. And I am according to my maps, a 35-minute walk away from the stadium. So I'm thinking, all right, if I can't Uber, I'm just going to walk. And, well, hindsight. I said, if I can't Uber, I'll just walk. And then I see how long the walk is going to take me. I said, well, if I can't walk, I'll Uber. So then I order an Uber. The Uber says 7 minutes away. It's 11:40. Okay, all right, 11:47. That means I'll have him take me up to stadium. By the time we get to stadium, I'll just get out of the car, and I'll blitz towards the front. I'll get in there probably right before right at kick, which, whatever. At this point in time, I got to swallow my pride and just get there when I can get there. Yep. That guy never shows up, so 5-6 minutes go by. He's still 7 minutes away. So I'm like, all right, I'm getting out of the car. I'm just going to start walking. So I call him, and I'm trying to tell him, hey, I'm going to try and walk towards your car so I can get in. He doesn't answer. Frank, the Uber. Frank the Uber doesn't answer. He has 4.89 stars. 4.89 stars on his profile. How? All right, so he doesn't answer. At least pick up. Anyways, he doesn't answer. So I'm like, all right, Uber doesn't get my service anymore. I'm going to Lyft. I go to Lyft. 15 minutes away. Okay, well, can't do Lyft. So I'm going back to Uber. And by the grace of Mark Dantonio's and Jim Harbaugh's God, Uber 1 minute away. And as soon as I clicked order Uber, I got a call. Hello, Brandon? Hello? Hi, what's going on? I don't remember his name. Yeah, I see you. You're right there. I mean, he was right in front of me.
Perfect.
Right in front of me. It was godsend. So I got in his car. I said, hey, man, I'm really in a rush. I hate to be that guy, but as quickly as you can get me to the big house, the better. This dude took it upon himself to be the greatest Uber driver, taxi driver, put him in any category of car services.
Anyone to ever grip a steering wheel.
Oh, my God. It was unbelievable. It was like Dale Earnhardt in his prime. And he took me from, it was 11:49, 48 maybe, when I got in his vehicle. About, like I said, 35-minute walk away. And he just blitzed, honked. Got me up to about half a mile from the corner of Stadium in Maine. Asked if it was good if I got out there. I said absolutely, and I walked the grass all the way down. I skipped the whole the sidewalk thing. I had boots on like a man, and the snow wouldn't faze me. The mud didn't faze me. And by God, I walked into that place and got in the elevator at 11:59, and I sat down in my spot at 12:01.
And I got an all-caps text at 11:58 saying, elevating up.
Biggest ups.
From the Levine Tower to the press box, which definitely has a name that I don't know.
Me either. Either way, I think the best text I sent was this: if I get there on time, this will be the biggest upset in press box history.
In arriving late
history. And sure enough, it was. So there's a story to start off the episode. But obviously what matters to those at home isn't what happened before the game. It's what happened during the game. Mm-hmm. Michigan clobbers Michigan State 44-10. It feels like something that people have been waiting on for years. I mean, this Mark Dantonio thing has been just year by year like a snowman. He's just been, in the years that they win, he's been building the snowman based on just pettiness and the things that he says, and Dash has a blanket on because he's cold. And then the years that they lose, he's pissing more people off by things that he says in Ann Arbor. Look, I think Mark Dantonio was a great coach. I still think he is a really good coach, but I think at one point he was a great coach. He was one of the better coaches in the country, not just in the Big Ten. He was arguably the best coach in the Big Ten before Urban Meyer was at Ohio State.
Yeah.
And all that being said, whether his best is behind him or not, this year was something that Michigan fans have been waiting on. And it almost felt like when that game ended, to them it was like, okay, all of that, the fumble, the trouble with the snap,
yep,
the 2017 debacle the years of pride before the fall, the stadium walk last year, all of that built up. And all of that was worth what we just witnessed, which was the absolute demolition that Michigan went on with Michigan State. What did you see on Saturday?
I think an absolute demolition is a good way to put it. I think that demolition starts and ends with Shea Patterson, 384 yards and 4 scores through the air, still ripping the ball downfield with 40 seconds left, found Cornelius Johnson wide open down the sideline. That's the kind of killer instinct that a lot of people thought Shea would have from the start. And Shea has, but when you're dealing with injuries for the first month and a half of the season, it's real tough to get into a rhythm. On Saturday, he looked 100%. He looked like the quarterback that a lot of people thought was transferring to Michigan last year. Just gunslinging everywhere, moving outside the pocket, throwing on the run, just making the smart reads. And I think that as he's gotten more comfortable with this Gaddis offense, they've given him more space on the field to read. I think you're seeing the benefits. It helps that Michigan State's secondary, which already is not good, was banged up. Josiah Scott hurt on the first play of the game.
Yeah, I mean, we pointed that out right away when we saw it, that was going to inevitably be a huge wrinkle in that game. I mean, Josiah Scott's could square up with most corners in this conference, and to lose him was insurmountable.
To lose him means Nico Collins, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Cornelius Johnson, and Nick Eubanks are all finding the end zone. Mm-hmm. And they did.
We saw a lot of – I think that game was so telling in so many ways, and I wrote about it after the game, was that what I said was in 2008, Mark Dantonio in his second year as the Michigan State head coach, coming off of the little brother game in 2007 and Rich Rodriguez's first year here at Michigan, took it to Michigan and celebrated on their field and made the Paul Bunyan Trophy a historic locker room trophy. He turned that into an on-field trophy by ordering his team to waltz around the stadium and celebrate in the crowd, and et cetera, et cetera. And that is really what birthed, I think, I shouldn't say birthed, that's what really rebirthed this rivalry into something that is, I think at this point in time, I know that there's a lot that went on in the history of this sport, of college football, but I think that span and this current span that we're on in this rivalry has been the most competitive, the most entertaining, the most media attention, the most petty. And you can say all the words that you want and all the adjectives you want to describe this rivalry. Mark Dantonio, like him or not, was the engine behind all of that. Had an average coach been at Michigan State and had Michigan State average throughout Michigan's mediocrity, so does this rivalry. And I think that it continues to be downplayed like it was in the 90s and the early 2000s, and when Michigan kind of just brushed off the MSU game and always focused on the Ohio States, the Notre Dames, and even at times the Minnesotas above Michigan State. But
everyone's above Michigan State.
But,
damn near everyone.
Yeah, at this stage. But in that same vein, right, all those things being said, Saturday felt like a script had flipped. I mean, unarguably, Mark Dantonio owned Michigan for all of the years before Jim Harbaugh, between 2008 and even into 2015 when they won in the fumbled snap. Yeah. But since Jim Harbaugh's arrival, he's 2-3 against Michigan. He's gone 3-9. He's gone, 7-6, and now they sit at 4-6. They can't lose a game.
And those games are at Rutgers and home against Maryland.
So in theory, they should go 6-6, but the fact that they have 2 games left and they're already at holy crap, we can't lose. And you were Michigan State, you were in the college football playoff a few years ago. Look, say what you want about Jim Harbaugh. Say what you want about not being able to accomplish at the highest level with talent that is perceived at the highest level. But if Michigan is able to scrap out a win against either A, Indiana and Ohio State, or B, Indiana and a bowl game, or B, Ohio State in a bowl game, should they lose to Indiana, then Jim Harbaugh will have his 4th 10-win season in 5 years at Michigan.
Yeah, and I think that shows, as you were kind of talking about big picture flipping of the script, Mark Dantonio's program is moving in the opposite direction.
Yeah, I mean, both teams left that stadium on Saturday in completely opposite trajectories.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that while we just talked about Michigan's offense, I think Michigan's defense also had a rather large role in holding the Spartans down.
And it continues. It continues. I mean, this trend of each year we talk about it, I feel like, where it's like, okay, besides maybe 2016, even last year in 2018 felt like it was going to be, another big year for defense. But here we are. We're approaching it's week 12, but it's game 11, and Michigan's defense it's got the highest pressure rate among college football teams nationally, according to Pro Football Focus. It's a top 10 unit nationally in most categories. It's once again Don Brown has this thing rolling, but defense again stands tall. Michigan now couples that strong defense here in the latter half of this 2019 season with a high-power offense that seems, like Jim Harbaugh said a few weeks ago, to be hitting its stride and then some. So what stood out to you about that defense on Saturday?
Yeah, I just think that the secondary play was unbelievable. After giving up some big plays early on to Cody White, they completely locked him down, picked off Lewerke twice. The pass rush is something that just seems to stand out every single week. As you said, Cam Mellon of PFF ranks Michigan at number 1 in the country with a 65% QB hurry rate, or a pass rush rate. That they're getting to the quarterback almost every time he drops back. Doesn't matter the opponent, doesn't matter the location. I mean, this is a defense that has been blowing up offensive lines. I think Aiden Hutchinson, Kwity Paye, Carlo Kemp made the Big Ten Team of the Week.
Josh Uche.
Uche is there every time he comes off the edge. I mean, these are guys that are game changers. And I think against Indiana, with a second-string quarterback playing, Michael Penix out for the season. We'll touch more on that later. If they could get to Peyton Ramsey, who they have seen before,
right,
starting with his true freshman season, I think that this is a group that's going to be in a good position to lock down the Indiana passing game.
So Michigan just clobbers Michigan State. The defense shines, the offense shines, a well-balanced destruction of the Spartans, something that Michigan fans feel that they've earned through the years of watching this rivalry and watching so many gritty games where, like 2016, where Michigan is by far the better team. I mean, by far. Michigan State was 3-9 that year, but they still gritted that one out and made it interesting. And then, of course, last year, only winning 21-7. I mean, but that's it. At the end of the day, they're like, all right, great. We beat Michigan State. We don't care how we do it. We beat Michigan State. For this year to happen, for it to happen that way in that style, obviously stands out. And I think the whole Harbaugh rivals narrative takes a seat for at least the near future, as they've clobbered Notre Dame, they've clobbered Michigan State. Now all they have to do is, you'd think, compete with Ohio State to continue to earn that respect. But
no, this is a fan base, the only fan base in the country that believes it is owed anything.
Correct. So let's move on to eyes on the enemy. So we're talking Indiana, the Hoosiers, and this is not a cakewalk Hoosiers team by any stretch of the imagination, with or without Michael Penix, with or without its starting quarterback. PFF did their quarterback rankings this week. They had Shea Patterson at 49. Peyton Ramsey was at 20. So
a limited sample size,
right?
Albeit.
PFF views Peyton Ramsey and that Indiana offense as an offense that is very fluent, very, very potent, and they'll face a tough task in the Michigan defense that we just spoke about. But in that same vein, Michigan gets a little bit of a break off of, well, what was supposed to be a strong Michigan State defense and an Indiana defense that isn't quite there on paper. Will it hold up stronger than Michigan State's? You'd have to think.
I don't think Michigan is walking into Bloomington and putting up 40. We'll see. I mean, Indiana's a team that always plays Michigan tough.
Always.
You cannot think of the last blowout in Michigan over Indiana, even though they haven't lost in this century.
Right.
So I definitely think that there's a lot to watch there. Jim Harbaugh, I thought, made a really good point when he addressed the media on Monday. He said that physically under Tom Allen, they've gotten a lot bigger.
Yep.
So that they're recruiting at a higher level, they're developing guys better in-house, and it's generally a more physical football team. They were nationally ranked for the first time in a very long time.
And it's a shame that they dropped out after a tough loss at Penn State.
Yeah, they were down 7 points in the fourth quarter.
Right, giving Penn State everything that they had. And then leaving Penn State obviously in the top 10. It just doesn't really add up. But the committee will be the committee.
Over Oklahoma, too.
committee will be the committee. So, but Tom Allen, yeah, I mean, he's a guy who at first was kind of a meme to me. I just thought he was a weird guy, and he looked like he both has a similar name to and looks like the guy from Home Improvement, Tim Allen. And so at first I kind of just memed him to death, but now he's starting to obviously become a respectable head coach, sort of like not a current but a former Pat Fitzgerald, who is able to take maybe not the academics that Northwestern has, but at least the talent level where it's similar, where there's a lot of 3 stars, 2 stars, a lot of local guys, and getting the most out of those guys and competing at a high level with most teams. Now, early in the year, they got absolutely. I cannot make out my words, but bear with me. Earlier in the season, they got absolutely train wrecked by Ohio State. And I think it was like 52-7 or something like that. I know because I took Indiana plus 25, and it didn't work out, obviously, because Ohio State covered every single game they played before last week against who else but Rutgers. But all that being said, Indiana is peaking at the right time, just like Michigan. And I read a stat today from Bear from College Game Day. Something like the past 6 or 7 seasons, whoever Michigan and Ohio State faces the week before those two teams play, both teams have not covered. They are 0-whatever. I think it's the past 6 or 7 years. They haven't covered once, and those games are all double possession spreads that they're not covering. Typically, Michigan does play like an Indiana before Ohio State, or an Iowa or whomever. Iowa's good. I should say something else. Sometimes it's a Northwestern, but really it's been Indiana as of late. I think the past 3 years.
Yeah.
So this is a different Hoosier team. This is a game that screams trap game. This is a game that Peyton Ramsey could create a world of problems should he get hot, and he had a great game last week. And I think that's why PFF thought of him so highly. And, Michigan is riding this ultra high off of just demolishing Michigan State. They know what's in front of them in Ohio State. They're building confidence off of that victory over Michigan State. And the past few weeks, this offense is rolling. They're putting up touchdowns at will. And I think all that's on their minds is, holy crap, we can beat Ohio State. Now, I can hear all of we knew all along we could be good enough to beat Ohio State. We knew all along. Sure.
Not if someone asked you the morning after the Wisconsin game or the morning after the Penn State game.
And ever since that Notre Dame game, and ever since the third quarter of that Penn State game, this team is transformed into a team that could beat Ohio State. Now, like you said, after Wisconsin and really before the second half of Penn State, if somebody came up to you and said, does Michigan have any chance to beat Ohio State? The answer would be clear as day, no. And the answer now is probably still leaning towards no. But it's a hell of a lot closer now at yes, they can beat Ohio State than it was weeks ago. And I think that's what's going through their minds, because they have been ridiculed so much, and I'm not saying these thoughts are manifested in their brains because of the media, but they have been ridiculed so much for not treating Ohio State as serious as as Ohio State treats Michigan. And now they've, Shea Patterson, post-game interview with Brad Galley at Channel 7 says, we know we've got Indiana, but we know we got a bigger one in a couple of weeks. We got one left that we got to take care of on their list of rivals. And you have to wonder, thinking ahead, yes, it's beneficial to think ahead when you're facing the best team in the country outside of LSU. It still possibly could be the best team in the country when it's all said and done. But how much does that hinder your matchup against Indiana, the one that's in the way? So this game screams trap game. Yeah. It also screams, hey, don't think about it. Don't look at each other and wonder what we're going to do to beat Indiana. Play our game. It's worked for 3 weeks. Go out there, execute, and do what you got to do, and things are going to work just as they have in the past 3 weeks. Yeah. Now, it's not as simple as that. It's not black and white. It's football. It's strategic. It's like a game of Risk, except for it's on a grass field, not on a board at home. And so this game screams trap game, but I think it's going to go one of two ways here. Michigan's going to grind this one out and ultimately lose by a field goal, on some crazy type Iowa 2016 stuff, or they're just going to obliterate them. And they're going to be like, hey, we're good now. Like, we've really righted this ship. This offense is what it was supposed to be all along, and we're not afraid to show it, and we're not going to let off any gas.
And what I think of a trap game, what I think of is a game before a big game against a team that's not good. Indiana doesn't fit that bill this year.
No, they know they're good.
The bill that they fit is the bill of a top-ranked, top 20, 25-ranked team that has a formidable offense, a serviceable defense, and a coach who has started to make a name for himself. So I don't think Indiana's a trap game by any means. I do see why going on the road is tough, but I think ultimately it's a game you have to take just as seriously as you would take a team ranked in that range, like maybe Iowa when they played them. Granted, Iowa was top 15, but I absolutely think that Indiana, as a football program, has made as big a stride as anyone in the country this year.
So that will be an interesting game, and we'll get to our predictions. But before then, we're going to talk about Hail to the Spread. It's our favorite segment every week. You use code EDGE10, you get 10% off an annual subscription. Or I'm sorry, monthly subscription. You use EDGE16 to get 16% off an monthly subscription, annual subscription. I'm so bad at ads. Annual. EDGE16 annual, EDGE10 monthly, baby. It's wild how bad I am at ads. Like, I'm totally fine talking about this and being open with it. If you have any advice, or if you want to just come in and do ads for us, just let me know. Just hit my DMs, be like, yo, ad guy, here to report for duty. Cool. You don't even have to get into detail. Just say that, and we'll make it happen. Let's hail to the spread. We're going to break down 4 spreads, 2 totals, 2 spreads. You know how it goes. If you ever want to chime in with your own selections, always down to talk some lines. Again, hit the DMs. First things first, Penn State, Ohio State. This one obviously close to home. We know a lot about both of these teams. Ohio State is next week, as we just discussed. Penn State was in the past. The over-under is what we're talking about here, not the spread. The over-under is at 56.5. And some might say, 56.5. Basically, this team just, this game just needs to be like 35-28 or 31-28, whatever it needs to be. However, I think this game goes under because Penn State does not have KJ Hamler. I do not trust their run game against Ohio State. I love Ohio State's passing defense. I think that they will challenge Sean Clifford and force him to make mistakes. And then, conversely, I don't think Ohio State's faced a defensive line or a defensive front in general anything like Penn State's. I think Michigan State's at the time was a lot better than it is now, and it had, they had Joe Pachi, Kenny Willekes was still playing very good at that point, Raekwon Williams, all those guys. Regardless, Micah Parsons is a guy who just changes a game. We saw that firsthand. Yeah. And there's plenty of guys on that defensive front for Penn State. They got the defensive end who's a draft prospect whose name I can't pronounce, but I'm sure you know who he is. It's got a hyphen in it. That's all I can really shine on with that one. Regardless, I think this game is like 28-14, 28-17.
You think one of these teams is held below 20 points in this game?
Maybe Ohio State puts up 31-35, but I don't think Penn State gets beyond 17 in this game.
Really?
Without KJ Hamler. We saw what Penn State's offense could do against Michigan. If you take KJ Hamler's speed out of the equation, what does it do? Honestly, that's a valid question in my opinion. I'm not saying
deep shot downfield takes away the slot fade.
I'm not saying Michigan wins the game without KJ Hamler, although it might. But I do think this game goes under without KJ Hamler for Penn State. Mm-hmm. And I think that pretty much seals victory for the Buckeyes. Because, I know the tight end for Penn State's good.
Fryermuth.
But I don't think he's a guy that does vertically does what KJ Hamler does. He's not going to be a guy that can get you a 60, 70-yard run after catch. So I like the under here.
All right. I'm going to go on the other side. I think that with the stakes of this game, there's going to be so many fireworks that fly. from the standpoint that a win would go so far for both teams, I just think that Sean Clifford is going to bring his A game. I think Justin Fields is a safe bet to always be on his A game. I don't think there's a defense out there, at least in the Big Ten, that can stop Dobbins. Big fan of what Ohio State's offensive line has been able to do for him. They're moving people against their will. I think Ohio State scores more than 30.
More than 30? That's fair.
30.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised.
And then by that point, I'm talking like, call it 5 touchdowns and a field goal. Say they sit mid to high 30s. I think Penn State doesn't get blown out.
Okay.
I think that they stay in the game, and then by that point, you're already naturally running up at like the 60-ish mark. I don't know. I think that.
So you're going over.
Yeah, I'm going to go over. I think a lot of it comes down to how well the quarterbacks play. I don't think either of them have stage fright, so to speak. I think that they've both stepped up at big times this season, and quite frankly, I think that with the stakes of this game, offenses are going to be able to move the ball.
Next game, Georgia, Texas A&M. Georgia's favored by 13.5. A&M is, per usual, great offensively, or pretty solid offensively. Have a great quarterback, Kellen Mond. Defensively, not great. Somewhere in the average mark. Better than they used to be, but not quite there.
The backfield is suffering.
Suffering very bad. Georgia, coming off the Auburn victory. Georgia fighting for a college football playoff spot. Georgia against anybody besides LSU, Alabama, or Florida is typically going to come out like an it's typically going to come out like an UGA team, prepared, ready to execute. Jake Fromm's probably going to ball out in this one. I think their athleticism and the depth of Georgia shines in this one. I got Georgia by somewhere between. I think they're going to win by 21.
Yeah, that was my prediction. I think they win this game by 3 scores, and I think you summed it up in 3 words: college football playoff. I think that all of their goals are still ahead of them.
Yep. Next up, we got an over-under in USC, UCLA. It's at 63. 2 high-powered offenses, 2 bad defenses.
2 really bad defenses.
And I know people are like, 63, now that seems a little too easy. And every single time it seems too easy, it goes under. So I'm not picking the under, but if I were logical, if I had to put money on it, I'd be like, it feels like everyone's going over, so I'm going to go under. And that's because I think Vegas is smarter than us, so let's do that. However, just making a pick right now, got to go over. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is a human lightning bolt. The new quarterback for USC, Slovis, I think his last name is.
Yeah, Caden
Slovis. He's come in and done a lot for them, and he's shown a big arm, and they're not afraid to throw the ball downfield. This is going to be a shootout from the very beginning. This screams like 78 points, but I'll stick at like 45-31.
Yeah.
Seems fair.
That seems fair. Yeah, the listeners of
USC, by the way.
USC, absolutely. UCLA at 4-6. I think we know of another team that we've discussed on the podcast who's 4-6.
Maybe Chip Kelly comes to Michigan State.
Yeah, hey, there you go. Float that one out there. Yeah, you thought Shea had a good game last week. Slovis had 29 completions on 35 attempts, threw for 406 yards and 4 touchdowns. Michael Pittman Jr. is unbelievable. 11 receptions for 180 yards and a score. I think USC could drop 50 in this game.
Is that good?
I would say so. I think a Battle of LA adds to the allure
it's a shootout.
Points going on the board.
It's a shootout, 100%. So we're both going over, right?
We're both going over.
All right. Texas,
Which
Baylor.
means the final score will be like 10-7.
Like what's that one game? The first game of the year. Ole Miss and Memphis. Just Jesus Christ. Texas and Baylor. This game is at Baylor.
Mm-hmm.
It's at Baylor. Baylor obviously coming off that 28-3 blown lead.
Yep.
This game screams emotions for Baylor, putting all of their emotions into that last game. I know this is an interstate rivalry. It means a lot for Baylor to beat Texas because they are kind of perceived as the underdog here throughout the history of football in Texas. I think Matt Rule is a better coach than Tom Herman as far as a head coach goes and game manager goes. I think that while Rule might be the while Herman might be the better offensive mind, that defense just doesn't do a whole lot for me. Texas is at 5.5, laying the points here as the underdogs. This game is going to be close. I think it's going to be another shootout here. But I think Baylor's a good football team. So I'm going to go with Baylor. The popular choice has been Texas. It's Texas. They always kind of build in the end of this season. 5.5 is a small line. But you know what? I'm going to take Baylor here because everyone is shining on Texas here. And I think that Baylor is a good team because they're coached well. I think it means a lot for Matt Rule to go from 1-11 in his first year to most wins in program history if Baylor can get to 11 wins. And this gets them one step closer. So give me the Bears -5.5. I think they win by probably 7.
I'm going to go ahead and shoot my shot because I think Texas wins this game outright.
Okay.
I think they've been on the precipice all year. They lost to LSU by 1 touchdown. They lost to Oklahoma by 1 touchdown. They have some decent wins over West Virginia. They beat Oklahoma State, kicked the crap out of Rice. Bad loss last week to Iowa State. I think this team rebounds. I don't think that they want to lose back-to-back games for the first time this season. I think that they go into Waco. Waco. And I think that they go out, they get off to a hot start. I think there's a good chance Baylor still reeling from last game, maybe emotionally haven't moved on. Texas gets out to a 14-zip lead. I think this game gets real interesting and they hang on.
And then we all pronounce Texas as back again, right?
Oh, of course. That's routine for this time of year.
All right, so let's...
Lost season ends in them being proclaimed as back again.
The Hook'em Horns has always stood for wah, wah, wah.
Have you
Get
seen
it? Horns. Wah, wah, wah. Hook'em Horns. Wah, 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 because it's sad and they suck.
Have you seen any of their new stadium renderings?
Yes, I saw the uterus thing. Yeah. It's a supposed student section or
the Longhorn?
department type section with the Longhorn, but the Longhorn resembles a female body part. Mm-hmm. And you can look that one up yourself. I feel like it's a visual thing. If I sat here and described it to you all at home, you'd probably want to give your kids earmuffs.
Moving on to our predictions for this week.
Michigan, Indiana, we discussed it at large. Let's go with our final score predictions on top of who we think has a great game offensively and defensively. First off, I think offensively, this is a game where it seems as if Nico Collins should be targeted more often. And he's just so much. I don't know. He's just so much bigger than everybody. I mean, it's like having the Hulk versus Stuart Little and be like, no, leave Hulk in the rotation. Let's we'll get him in a couple of times, and then Hulk just has like 6 3-pointers because he's the Hulk and he can just put his arm out and drop it in the net from the 3-point line. It's like the Monstars, and you're just not using him. Whatever, it is what it is. Nico Collins, obviously this team's best player offensively from just a pure, hey, we need something right now standpoint. I know Ronnie Bell is doing a lot of stuff too, but Nico Collins is a human cheat code. I mean, when he has thrown the ball, it is 3 possibilities. Defensive pass interference, he caught the ball. Well, for some reason, the team or the referee just decides to call offensive pass interference, which we saw against Penn State. So, I'm just going to stick with the whole Nico Collins thing because, why the hell not? I mean, that's logically speaking, it should be him. I don't know who else would want to not pick him because he should be targeted 16 million times a possession. So that's my pick.
Did you give a score?
Oh, just for offensive player. We'll go through.
Okay, cool. My offensive player this week is going to be Zach Charbonnet.
Lovely. Yes, this is like a. What was that one game he did that against a lesser team? Army?
When he scored 3 times
and
rushed for 100 yards?
Yes, that's the one.
Yes, that was in terms of yards per carry, not a great showing. But I think
the 33 carry game? I think I was thinking about Illinois, which I think that was Haskins, so my bad.
Yeah. Him and Haskins have made for a real nice platoon.
Talk about Hassan Haskins. Goodness gracious.
Jeez.
I mean, he's brought an entire new dynamic to his offense.
Yes, to think he was playing linebacker a year ago from right now.
Harbaugh.
Yeah, hey, Jay Harbaugh actually talked a ton about Hassan Haskins today at media availability. Did you know that he falls forward on over 80% of his carries?
Well, yeah. I watched the games, Dash.
Yeah. Anyway, I do think that this is going to be a nice Charbonnet week. I think that he's been a bit quiet lately. Obviously, the passing game absolutely lit Michigan State up. On the road, Michigan has struggled to get things going.
Yep.
Slow start at Wisconsin. Slow start
the only game they really came out firing was Illinois, but then it all backtracked. It was like a boomerang.
Yeah, and I think that on the road for this team to go out and play 4 full quarters of football, you got to establish the run. And then from there, you set up play action where Shea is very comfortable, and I think everything kind of works itself out. So I think that if they are going to pick a guy to set up the run, it's going to be Haskins or Charbonnet. I think both of them, I'm not even going to come out here and say one of them will have a nice Saturday.
Yeah, defensively, I think it's going to be Uche. I think he stacks up like 3 sacks in this game. He did this against, I think it was Maryland, where he really had like an extremely good game on the road. And this just screams the same thing. He's so much faster than those Indiana O-linemen. And Indiana typically has some pretty solid O-linemen.
Yeah, they do. They're big.
But regardless, I just think Uche is just athletically, he's just a freak. And off that edge, it's just really hard for any tackles to handle him. He's so good with his hands off the edge to get by tacklers, to get by tackles and blockers just in general. So give me Uche. I think he's literally going to rack up 3 sacks in this game. I just have this weird feeling. 3 sacks, like 2 tackles for a loss, just light work.
I'm going to get real specific here. I think that Michigan's going to need a big defensive play on the road against a good team.
So you think this game's going to be close?
I think this game's going to be relatively close. I think that Josh Metellus is going to have a pick 6. I'm calling that now. It is Wednesday at 5:23 p.m.
Eastern Standard Time.
Because of course, I think Josh Metellus is gonna pick a ball off. I think that you gotta like the fact that he's going up against a backup quarterback, who's had success. Maybe a backup quarterback who's going to be a bit too confident, coming off a pretty solid stat line at Penn State. I think playing at home, he's going to be a little less risk averse. I think that if Peyton Ramsey takes a shot towards Josh Metellus, it's going to be a touchdown, and it won't be for Peyton Ramsey. You got to like the fact that Josh Metellus is a senior who's played through so many quote-unquote trap games, and I think he really makes a big play in this one.
So Michigan's 10-point favorite. They opened as 8-point favorites. That point line has moved 2 points fully, which is, nothing too crazy, but it is enough to note. The over-under started at 51.5. It's now up to 53. 91% of bets are on the over. Shout out Action Network. And all that being said, this seems like the game that Michigan has some struggles early, like you mentioned, and I think they pull away in the end. I think the final score here is going to be 38-17. I'm prone to saying that Michigan's going to score 45. I don't think that they push for that garbage time touchdown like they did against MSU to kind of just press the gas. Yep. Because you know what? Hey, once you go up about 17 on the road before Ohio State in the third or fourth quarter, you're just trying to get out healthy. Mm-hmm. And that's most important is you need to carry this team into Ann Arbor against the Buckeyes and secure the win. And then get your guys out of there. This isn't like last week where you keep all your starters in all the way through to really rub it into Michigan State. So 38-17 is my final score prediction. That covers the 10-point spread for Michigan, and then on top of the 51.5 at the spread.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think Michigan wins it 24-21.
Wow. Very close.
Going to go with a low-scoring game that's going to be close.
So the offense struggles for Michigan, in theory.
At the outset. I think that there's a lot that can go wrong.
Well, compared to the 44 against Michigan State, that would be a struggle to cut it in half.
I would say so. I think defensively Michigan's going to do a good job. I think from a physical standpoint, they overwhelm Indiana. I think this defense is faster, this defense is quicker, this defense is more experienced than anyone that's going to try to stop it. But I do think that Indiana at home, riled up for a big game against Michigan, especially coming off a loss against Penn State in a game that was so close, is going to come out and have a little success moving the ball. Maybe 24-17 is a bit better of a prediction, but seeing them get into the end zone 3 times is a stretch. But it's Michigan's first real road. I don't want to call it a test, but it's a legitimate game.
Well, Penn State was kind of a road game.
Yeah, I know. It's their first in a while.
Oh, okay. I thought you said the first of the year.
No, first. I meant for Wisconsin, too.
Right.
I think that Michigan, I'll go 24-17. I don't think Indiana gets into the end zone 3 times, but I could see 2 touchdowns and a field goal.
All right, well, that's that. Yeah, so trap game, maybe. We'll see. We're on opposite sides here. We split in half on the spread picks, and we're on the opposite sides of predictions here. Well, obviously, we're both predicting a victory.
What was your final score prediction?
38-17. So we both.
17. So you think they cruise?
I think that they struggle early and they go into half up like, I think it's like 14 and a half, maybe 17-14 and a half, and then I think they cruise.
They blow it up.
Yeah, I think they can. I think that Indiana comes out and confuses them in the first half offensively, and then I think at the second half they really secure it, and then they kind of just ride it. And the fourth quarter is like, hey, let's get out of here healthy. So, all right. Well, hey, I'm Brandon Justice, joined by me as always, the Dash Man. Never forget, if you hail to the victors,
You'll hail to the podcast. Thank you.
See you next week.